does in terms of regulating electric and gas rates, pipeline safety, and the fact that we've got about 5 districts here in the state, and while he's elected statewide, he resides in the 2nd district. That means he had about an hour and 10-minute drive to get down and speak with us this morning. So we certainly appreciate him doing that. He grew up next door over in Clayton County, so he's not a stranger to the area here by any means. And his father served in elected office. He met his wife Wendy at UGA, and he was elected in 2010 as the Public Service Commissioner. And he ran against 3 challengers from the GOP and 1 Democrat, and had a runoff. So like some of you who have run for office here, you know what the challenges are and can identify with that. Now, I found out that Tim, one of his first jobs after coming out of college was selling cars, which made me very suspicious. But I read a little bit farther. They weren't used cars. He did handle the commercial sales part, so we're going to give him a little bit of a break on that. But he started the Family Resource Network, and they've got a teen branch that's in 42 states, and maybe he'll tell us just a little bit about that. But he's very well qualified to talk about teens because he and his wife Wendy have 7 children. He's also the author of Real Citizenship, and we're just thrilled that Claudia was able to get a hold of Tim, invite him down, and ask particularly that he talk about the topic that's behind me, and that's human trafficking. While that doesn't fall under the Public Service Commission, it is a topic that I think is key to any public official. So with that, I'll step down and ask Tim to step up, and we'll get going. Bill.
And I thank you for sending me back to the Public Service Commission with 69% of the vote in the primary and another 69% in the general election. I was telling Bob that I lost 2 counties to my opponent in the general election, and it grieves me that one of those was Clayton County, where I spent my youth. My grandfather was a 3-term county commissioner there. Some of you may have known Ed Echols or heard of my granddad, E.P. Ed Echols. But I think we've got a lot of work to do, and Bob and I were talking about just reaching out to other people within our party. And I don't know if you've looked at the demographic projections for our state, but University of Georgia and a number of other places have done a lot of work on this. And my friends, I'm telling you that if we aren't successful as a party in reaching our Hispanic friends, not all of them, some of them, reaching a small slither of African Americans,
amen, brother,
and reaching millennials and these young people, we're going to lose our majority of the state.
Amen.
And as I think about let's just take the African American community, because Clayton County is now about 95% African American. As I think about the African American community and some of the people that I've interacted with in black churches in particular, these people have a lot in common with me. They read the same Bible. When I compare African Americans to, say, people at University of California, Berkeley. Now, who do you have most in common with? A person that believes in God up the road here in a black church, who opens the Bible, who's trying to raise their children in a way that's going to benefit this society? Sure, they're different than we are. And we've got all kind of stereotypes that we're dealing with. But I'm telling you that the left that's controlling institutions like University of California, Berkeley, these people we have nothing in common with. These people want to limit our speech. These people want to take over society and take everything we have away from us that we value, like God, like values like limited government, and we just need to move past, I'm afraid, we just need to move past some of the racial prejudice that we've had, that I've had growing up, and reach out. Because I think it's not just about political power and controlling, the agenda. It's the right thing to do. Let's take the Hispanic community, the fastest growing demographic in Georgia. These are people, many that I meet. They're very hardworking. They're Catholic. They have a lot of children. They're pro-life. They're pro-God. Again, I ask, do we have more in common with them or University of California, Berkeley? So, how can we reach out as a party and help people that have been outside of our party see and understand the distinctives of our party? And when I talk about distinctives, I'm talking about core values: smaller government, local government, lower taxes, federalism, empowering states, bringing things back to the state, enduring moral order. Did you know that is a bedrock conservative value? And I would suggest to you that those Hispanics who are in church tonight at their Catholic church, and the African Americans up the road who will be in church all afternoon tomorrow, that those people have a lot in common with us. Now, we have work cut out because, there's distrust and the media has distorted our positions, but there's nothing to me that builds more trust than just having a relationship, just reaching out. And it's one of the things that after I lost Clayton County and DeKalb County, those are the only two counties out of 159 that I lost. After that, I told my team, the next 6 years, we're reaching out to minorities. We're reaching out and building relationships. I'm going to go to every black church that I can go to. I'm going to make donations to fundraising efforts where African Americans are trying to improve their community. There's a group called Safe America working in Clayton County to kind of curb gang violence, curb trafficking. I'm going to help them. We're going to be on their board. We're going to show these people that we care about them. That doesn't mean I'm compromising anything about who I am. But you have to start with a relationship. And Fayette County is situated geographically right here. These are, you're driving through their community. And we need to figure out how to reach them. Well, I was asked to speak today about human trafficking, and it's certainly an issue that is not new to this planet. In fact, even though I'm going to talk about trafficking in Georgia over the last 15 years and how it's grown, this is an issue that happens everywhere in every generation. I mean, it's happening in Mexico today. I mean, it happened in Japan in World War II. It happened in India in the late 1800s in Hindu temples. Everywhere you have vulnerable women and girls, and everywhere where you have men with money and power, these girls are exploited and defrauded. And I want to talk about that. I want to dedicate my talk today to my late mom, Judy Tumlin Echols Talent. She lived just down off of Georgia 85, across from the trading post, and off Grantchester. And some of you heard me talk about her before, but I was just kind of reflecting, on my mom with Mother's Day coming up as I was driving down and coming back, down a road that, went to her house and our house. I grew up in Riverdale, just behind the old Big Star there off the gas line off Howell Lane. And then when my mom and dad divorced, my mom moved down to Grantchester. But I think about as I was thinking about my mom and what she did for me, as I was the oldest son of 4, my mom really set my moral compass for me. I mean, I have to really give her credit. I mean, my dad taught me about being an entrepreneur and working hard. But it was my mom who set that moral compass, who made sure that I was in church, who spanked me when I lied, and when I cheated, and when I picked on people, and when I mocked people, and when I didn't do what I was told to do or what I agreed to do. It was my mom who was concerned for my moral safety. So as I would go up to my dad's car auction on Stewart Avenue, Prostitution Row up there, an environment of mostly men, it was my mom who talked to me in advance and said, Tim, there's going to be temptations there. Tim, you need to be strong. Tim, you need to remember your values. It was my mom who set me down in the church every Sunday where I could hear a message. And it was in 1971 when the astronaut Neil Armstrong had walked on the moon and was making his way around the United States that he came to the Rock Baptist Church in Rex, Georgia on Highway 42 and shared his story. Going to the moon, walking on the moon, looking back at the earth, and the profound impact that that experience was in his life as he thought about God and God's role in all of existence for us. And it was that night, sir, it was that night that I said, that's what I want for my life. I want to be a person that honors and follows God. But I credit with my mom with setting me on that path and giving me that opportunity to hear that. And it is those values, that commitment, that attracted me to my wife, Wendy, who I met at the Baptist Center at the University of Georgia, who I married in 1983, and we've been married for 33 years. We've had 7 children. Our family, it is the most important thing to me. I like this job. I like serving. I mean, it was true of Kathy, who really motivated me to do this through, when I met him when I was 17 years old at the Atlanta Airport Rotary Club. And he challenged me. He invited me to come back to his office. I'm sure he had done many, many, many young men and women. And he sat me down one-on-one and challenged me. I mean, he didn't mentor me, not meet with me every week or anything, but he just added to what my mom had started and what other moms who I had, like Robin Greer, my student council advisor at North Clayton, like Gwen Collier, who taught at Forest Park High School, who was the state student council coordinator, who took an interest in me. And these women who I honor, as having a mothering impact on me, they pushed me. They challenged me. They weren't afraid to say, Tim, control yourself and use self-discipline and honor God with your actions. And it stuck and it took. And it's so important to me to be true to my values and to learn how to be able to communicate those to other people. I love going to left-leaning groups. I love going into environmental groups and talking about the God who created the earth. I don't worship the earth. I worship the God who created the earth. And being able to share my testimony and my story with other people, but at the same time being able to work hard on behalf of people, being accessible to them across all of social media, answering my telephone, giving my cell phone number out. Because you know what? Even people that disagree with you philosophically, if you're kind to them and you take care of them with problems that they're having, even those people like you. And not that they'll ever vote for me. And I don't know that that's why I should be serving with all that I have just to get a vote. I think we do what we do with a spirit of excellence because that's who we are, right? And that's what we're trying to teach others to do, not just for what you get from that. Well, let's talk about a horrible topic that's happening, in Atlanta today, last night, and it is human trafficking. And if you think about what human trafficking it really is coercive. And as the law has it, it doesn't have to be underage. You have trafficking of minors, but you can traffic adults. Right? As you think about people coming over the border, right? The coyotes that bring people who cross the border fence. Many of those women are abused as they're coming. And they get here thinking they're going to be doing one thing and they wind up exploited by people. That's human trafficking. Anytime you get a vulnerable person and you coerce them, in this case, for sex, when you coerce them with something, it doesn't have to be food or money. It can be drugs. It can be a threat to their family, to their child. Any coerciveness, that's human trafficking. And the law says in Georgia that if you do that to a minor, whether they consented or not, you're trafficking. You cannot take an underage girl or a boy, but it's mainly girls, and sell them for sex regardless of what kind of consent you think they may have given. They cannot consent to it. And we have a problem with that. There was a sting that went on just recently. The GBI is constantly doing these stings because there's web pages that you can go to. Backpage is one of these where girls are sold. And there are men going on these sites. They see a picture of a girl. They can text for them. Most of these girls have there's a cell phone number on there, and these guys start texting. They set up a meeting arrangement, and our GBI has started playing smart on this. They've started putting their own ads up there, and so guys that go on this page, thinking they're texting with a 15-year-old or 17-year-old, they're texting with a GBI agent like my daughter Mary, who will be going into the FBI. Here she graduates with her master's in criminal justice next weekend. She's being interviewed by the FBI now in the North Carolina Bureau as well. She's got those two in track. We don't know exactly which one she's going to wind up with, but this is what she wants to do. So this guy's really texting with my daughter or a male FBI agent or GBI agent, doesn't know it. Thinks he's texting with a 14 or 15-year-old. The GBI agent will reveal an underage, keep the guy, make sure that the guy, several times in the conversation that he knows he is talking with a minor. They'll set up a meetup. Like one of the most recent ones was a hotel out in Conyers. One of the people at NAB was a 56-year-old guy. In fact, his first cousin came to my office saying, Commissioner, my cousin's about to get out of jail. He's just struck a plea agreement. He should stay in. He's done this before. So she was begging that her cousin stay in jail. So a 56-year-old man. And I saw the transcript on the plea agreement. He had been conversing with this girl, what he thought was a girl, the arrangement was clearly $150 for the first hour, an extra $75 for the next 30 minutes. He's running out to Conyers from Atlanta. He's 56. She's 16. And he walks into a surprise. As did 34 other people on that sting. And it's a federal offense. And these guys wind up in the penitentiary. We just had another sting just 2 weeks ago. You can Google it and see, but I want to say that a lot of the men who are getting caught in this, because I'm going to show you a lot of pictures of the perpetrators, but the men that are buying this have skin color of my skin color. They're white. It is a North Atlanta, for the most part, phenomenon where white men, older white men who have the money are purchasing sex, in our city from minors. I'm not going to read through all of these cases, but I'm just going to just show you a few. Again, all these people are in prison. In this case, he kidnapped a 15-year-old female from Michigan, transported her to Atlanta, raped her, forced her into prostitution by threatening her with further physical harm. This is a typical MO. The masters have sex with these girls, often impregnating them. They let her go ahead and have the baby. In fact, they keep selling her, even though she's pregnant, and advertise her as pregnant. It's a fetish. And these masters, I'm calling them, they have, once they get that baby, now they've got something that she really cares about. And they use that baby as collateral with her to keep her in this. And so here's a girl that's been brought from Michigan to Atlanta, and what these guys do is they'll move them from this hotel for 3 days over to this hotel. They're living out of hotels. They're running this operation in hotels. We're not talking about some Italian mafia here. We're talking about a man who owns 2 or 3 girls. He's, quote, an entrepreneur, right? And he is advertising her on Backpage. People like the 56-year-old are coming. They're giving her the $150. She's not keeping that. Because as soon as she's done, he's coming in and taking the money. And she's trapped. I mean, she's from Michigan. She didn't have an ID. She didn't have a car. I mean, where is she going to go? I guess she could run out of the hotel. Some of them do. Maybe find a police car, find somebody to help. But these guys are watching them closely. They are addicting them to heroin or meth. Now they've got something else over them. And here's a girl who is being forced to have sex with men 3, 4, 5 times a day. Now let me ask you, ladies, what would that do to you psychologically? And this is why the focus groups that Global Centurion has done with women coming out of this is that 100% of them have psychological issues. Half of them have attempted suicide. I mean, just imagine, you're 15 years old, you've been kidnapped, you've got men coming into your room, older men, you're not getting anything other than grief and a hard time and being roughed up. You can't get away. To me, it sounds pretty hopeless. And this is what we have. I mean, yes, I want this guy put away, and we are putting a lot of them away, but he's half the problem. The other half is the 56-year-old white guy who's traveling out there to pay the $150. Four defendants charged with conspiring to transport and harbor 3 females, including 2 juveniles from Mexico, to the U.S. and forcing them to engage in prostitution in the Atlanta area. One of the 4 pled guilty to conspiring, la-da-da-da-da. I mean, this is pretty common. In Savannah, the U.S. Attorney's Office raided a house, got a tip, raided a house across from the skating rink, 12 women in dog cages. All Hispanic, none of them could speak English. In those little dog pens. Yeah, keeping them in there. And then, making them perform, and render service to whoever. Now those guys were put away for a very long time. And should. I mean, there's not a harsh enough punishment, really, for people like that. 3 defendants charged with trafficking young Mexican females into the U.S. and forcing them into prostitution. I mean, you know, we've heard a lot about the fence and the wall and the, you know, and the immigration problem, and it is. But to me, this is one of the things that's not really talked about very much. I mean, we talk about the bad guys coming over, and there are, as our president's pointed out. But you know, bad guys do bad things. And these bad guys aren't just doing bad things to our people. They're doing bad things to their own people. And this is a major problem that we have in our country right now. These 2 guys transported a 16-year-old girl from El Dorado, Arkansas to Atlanta. Along the route, they beat and raped her. 2004, a federal grand jury indicted them on 6 counts of kidnapping, sex trafficking, forced labor, and transporting a minor in interstate commerce for criminal sexual activity. Again, this is the typical thing, and oftentimes it is a foster care child. Because remember what happens in foster care? When they age out, you've heard that expression? They age out of foster care. So you're a girl. You've just aged out. You've been to 5 different homes. You leave your last home. Hopefully you go off to technical college and get a degree. But maybe you don't. Maybe you hear about this cool video being shot in Atlanta and how you could be a star or a model. And there are guys in Atlanta who will lure these girls for a promise of a job. And yeah, maybe they do take a few pictures and then they become the girl's faux boyfriend, and then it's, well, I've got a friend I need you to do a favor for. And then it just gets progressively worse from there. Typical routine in how it happens. These foster children are vulnerable. That makes what my mentor Truett Cathy was doing with his Wind-Shaped foster care program even more important to me. The fact that Truett Cathy took his own money and built foster homes and hired a couple and bought a van and paid for all their food and paid for their education and paid for their clothes and paid for their wedding. You realize how much this man did for people in our state? You know, he wasn't one to toot his own horn, but Truett Cathy, who knows how many young ladies he has saved from this life through the Wind-Shaped foster care program. Charles Floyd, this is one of the worst. Sir Captain and Sir Charles co-defendant Andrew Moore prostituted girls, some as young as 12 years old. The pair enticed victims by promising them a lavish lifestyle. They used physical violence, rape, psychological techniques to keep the victims obedient. Victims were sold online and run on a circuit in other states and cities. Co-defendants also paid for condoms manufactured out of the state. And these factors allowed for RICO charges to be filed. We have a very small unit over at the GBI working on this. I mean, it seems like every time we catch a group, another group pops up. We almost can't stay ahead of it. You go, man, why is this culture just so, just so
resilient,
wickedly resilient? You know what? As I've studied this topic, I'm reading a book right now about the comfort women that the Japanese Army the Japanese Army kidnapped and trafficked during World War II. Any of you World War II veterans or had a dad that was a veteran? I want you to think about this. These guys are thugs. But I want you to think about what the Japanese Army did. The Japanese Army set up comfort stations wherever their troops were bivouacked. Throughout China, throughout the region. The Japanese were very strong. They were a force to be reckoned with. So they set up these comfort stations, and they trafficked Korean women for the most part. But it was I think a dozen other nationalities, but mostly Korean. This is how organized they were. This is how bureaucratic this was. So the Army paid for the comfort station. It's a home, 10 rooms, 20 rooms, 30 rooms. They gave printed coupons to enlisted men and officers. And if you would present the coupon to the master at the comfort station, and that granted you one session with one of the girls, and you could pick which one that you wanted. They had Japanese names, and the rooms were numbered. And I've got the book where the Korean government went and found some of these women and got their testimony. And these women, some would be violated 30 times a day. And the Japanese army was so conscientious that after each sexual experience, the woman, there was a prescribed routine. There was a chair, she would sit in a chair and she would disinfect. Why? Because they didn't want the Japanese soldiers to contract any sexual transmitted diseases. These girls only served as soldiers, no one else. This was a military operation. And then once a week, they were all taken to a military hospital and examined by a military doctor. And this went on throughout World War II. And the Japanese explanation, we don't want our soldiers raping local women. And we want to take care of their need. These Korean women, when you read their accounts, and I don't understand Asian culture that much, but there was great shame. And as they made their way back, and when the Japanese were defeated, the comfort station, obviously everyone ran for their lives, and the women were just left there, having to try to get back to Korea. And many of them, of the dozen testimonies that I've read, never told their family what happened. Never told them. Just that shame of being violated, the way that they were violated, because of no fault of their own, because many times it was a Korean that came to their town and said, hey, would you like to go and be a seamstress? Would you like to go and serve? There's an opportunity for you to make money. And most of these women said, we were never paid anything. In fact, the way the master did this was, you're working to pay off your transport here, and the clothes that we're giving you, and the food, and your lodging. And they would build this tab for these women, that they were then servicing the army to pay off a tab. And so this isn't just something where thugs are involved. This is something where people, when they have power and they objectify women, they can do this thing. It's one of the reasons I was against casino gambling, because the UNLV study showed that people at casinos are 17% more likely to pay for sex than anyone else. And that is why when you go to Las Vegas and you're getting off the plane, the flight attendants joke and say, remember, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Because when you enter into certain environments, I guess, you think you have the freedom to do things that maybe you don't do in other places. Like pay for sex, for example. And it's one of the reasons that I wrote op-eds and stood up against having a casino in our state. Because I know that the people coming there, not all of them, some of them, in their euphoria, will pay for sex. And some of those girls who get bought will be underage. Because men who are paying for sex think they're checking IDs? You think they're really being conscientious about this? Now, I want to make sure I'm not with a minor. My friends, that's not happening. And so we are putting our children at greater risk. And if we build a casino in Atlanta, I think we are exacerbating this problem. And I hope that we don't go there. Though our Republican Party has taken a chunk of change from MGM.
That's bad.
A chunk of it. Many of our candidates, many of our officials, they've taken the maximum contribution. I don't mean to play the moral card to people. I certainly don't. I've got some wonderful men and women in the legislature and in state government that I respect. But on this issue, I wish that they would refrain from taking this money. And I know that they're not obligated to support it. I understand that, but it buys access. People that give me contributions, I do feel obligated to meet with them. And that's why I don't take money from Georgia Power executives. I don't take money from their employees. And I'm certainly not going to take any money from a casino. U.S. versus Pipkins. This guy actually made a book. A rule book for pimping in Atlanta. A book. Really, really pimping in the South. A movie by Sir Charles and Scooby to give the lowdown on what a pimp is all about. I can't wait for my daughter, who is a Division I hurdler, who will be carrying a Glock, who really gets mad about this stuff. I can't wait for her to get in front of these people with that gun. Because she is going to be lethal force. United States versus Norris. 3 defendants charged with conspiracy to hold young women, forced labor, trafficking for purposes of labor, commercial sex acts. I'm told, and have read accounts, if you go to South Georgia or other places when the migrant labor comes in to pick our onions or other things in the field, and they're staying in that little makeshift camp with mobile homes, that traffickers will bring in a girl on Friday or whatever, and she'll service 30, 40 men, $25, $50 a pop. She's held without her against her will. I mean, what? You telling me that a girl would voluntarily sign up to be violated 50 times? She's not getting that money. The master's getting that money. And how we can be so fooled on this is amazing to me. They use physical force. In fact, this focus group that I told you about, done by Global Centurion, one of the most common ailments of the girls that had come out of this that escaped was that they had had a tooth knocked out. Now tell me, when you're using physical force to keep someone doing something, does that sound like it's consensual? No. This is coercive in the very worst way. United States versus Jones. Defendant Jimmy Lee Jones, a.k.a. Mike Spade, pled guilty to sex trafficking, sentenced to 15 years. He lured females, including 2 minors, into prostitution through promises he would help them find jobs as models. This is one of the most common ploys. Between 2000 and 2005, he used a scheme of increasingly sexualized activities, such as explicit photographs, striptease performances, and finally forced them to compel with victims to engage in commercial sex acts. Here's one close to home. Asian massage parlor, 2007. Several massage parlors just up the road in my home county were not only fronts for illegal prostitution, but also forced newly immigrated women to become sex slaves. And in some of these locations, as I created the Unholy Tour that goes around to some of these places and takes legislators on a bus to kind of show them. Our tour guide, who had been involved in the adult entertainment world, took us by a massage parlor and she said, I know for a fact that they're keeping girls in the back of that building. They're staying there because as these Asian women are brought in, their passports are taken, locked up, or held by the master, and they live there in that building. And you see these signs all over I-75 going south, don't you? And sometimes it's a woman that's running these places. But these girls, again, not all of them, but in the ones that they raided, it was involved with illegal prostitution. Victor Hill was involved with this bust. One of the women escaped at one point, but was caught, raped, and beaten, given an STD, and then forced to perform other acts. At least one other women were forced to perform sex acts for over 4 years. To me, what these men are doing, again, both the men selling and the men buying, is that they are destroying the women's lives. Right, so if you cut a lady's life in half, you give her a sexually transmitted disease, you impact her psyche in a way that, that she feels shame for the rest of her life. I mean, how do you put a price on that? I mean, there is not a harsh enough penalty for either of the parties, the men selling or the men buying. Here's a woman that was involved. Female Brazilian living in Dunwoody, trafficked young Brazilian women, children into the U.S. through Mexico in exchange for high fees. They were promised legitimate jobs, sales, maids, waitresses. However, once they get here, hey, you're going to stay in this house and you're going to service men coming into Sandy Springs. You're going to live right here. I mean, what do you do? How do you get out of that? You've come here illegally, and now you've gotten yourself into a very difficult situation that's ruining your life. Operation Cross Country. 35 arrests in Atlanta during a sting operation just like the one I told you about last week. College Park. Defendant Chris Presley forced minors, females, to engage in commercial sex acts by selling them as prostitutes on Craigslist. Sentenced to 17 years in prison and 5 years supervised release. Ordered to pay $60,000 in restitution. Another Mexican. 6 defendants recruited dozens of young women and girls from rural Mexico, promising them education and a better life. Guess what? They get here, you're going to service these men. Operation Cross Country. Part 8. 11 children being victimized through prostitution in the Augusta, Atlanta, Macon, Savannah area recovered as part of an operation targeting child sex trafficking. Again, 2 Mexicans compelled 3 women after luring them to the United States. This is probably half of it, right here. Girls coming over the border. A 3rd co-defendant pleaded guilty to related immigration offenses. Another one, head of sex trafficking ring from Mexico. He and 7 other men charged with sex trafficking, alien smuggling, interstate prostitution, forced young women and girls from Latin America to come here. In Macon, pled guilty to sex trafficking. He was prostituting girls in Macon and on Tidy Island, advertising them for erotic services. He was arrested. He had 3 victims with him. Cobb County, West Atlanta suburb, of course, grand jury indicted Mr. Prince on charges of trafficking, pimping, aggravated molestation, statutory rape, pandering, enticing children, recruited victims, some as young as 14 years old, and selling them online. We've got this internet task force. They're the ones that are at the computer pretending to be the girls, luring these guys. Here's another guy, brutal leader of the largest sex trafficking ring ever. There are some rings operated out of Savannah. This is the guy who had 12 women in dog cages. In Dunwoody, you recently heard about another version of this, where detectives found a sex trafficking ring in a neighborhood in Dunwoody. Police arrested, in this case, this man and this woman who ran the operation out of 2 apartment complexes. In Lawrenceville, convicted on 4 counts of trafficking, harbored 2 girls, 15 and 16, forced them into prostitution. Typical MO. FBI operations rescued 149 victims, 153 alleged pimps. And we're calling them pimps, but really they're cruel masters. And it goes on and on. Let me just stop there. It's a depressing topic, and in case somebody asked you, why is he doing that? He's on the Public Service Commission. My question is, why aren't all officials talking about this? How can we let this go on under our nose and not dedicate more efforts to it to run these bad guys out of town? And then, I'm so grateful for all of our churches that are that are preaching and teaching a message that can change people's hearts. Because that's what we need to happen with, with the men in our city. Because all of us are prone to evil. All of us have wicked thoughts. And I think it's only God in us that enables us to have control of this. And so praise God for the many churches that we have who are trying to get people to follow a better way. Because we can legislate all the stuff we want, we can send out enforcement, but it's really only the heart change that can make the permanent difference. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Yeah.